Next game that we have to talk about, my game of the week, we have Alabama, currently ranked the #1 team in the nation, going on the road to the Swamp to take on Florida, who currently is ranked number 11. This game is slated to take place on CBS with a 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. Alabama is going into this game as a 15.5-point favorite. Now, when you look at Florida in this game, obviously, a lot of people don't think Florida is going to win this game. So, okay, outside of me telling you Florida doesn't have a chance, you should be asking me, JT, what can Florida do to win this game? And I'm going to tell you, as a matter of fact, I think that Florida has a big disadvantage and a big advantage going into this game against Alabama that could kind of decide how this game goes. And that big advantage / disadvantage that they have going into this game against Alabama is the fact that they currently are in a quarterback controversy per se. Now, you have Emory Jones and you have Anthony Richardson. Now, Anthony Richardson and Emory Jones have kind of like split snaps. They both have gotten significant playing time between the FAU opener for Florida and last week's win against USF. Well, Dan Mullen is still rolling with Emory Jones as the starter. Emory Jones hasn't really played all that great so far. Anthony Richardson, on the other hand, has came behind Emory Jones in a couple of snaps. And when he's been in, he's been fairly impressive. And I think that this is going to be a big game in terms of determining who's going to be the starting quarterback for Florida moving forward for the rest of the year. But I think that having this 2-quarterback system is kind of an advantage for Florida because, one, if you're Nick Saban and you're Alabama, you have to prep for both Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. So when you're Alabama and you're Nick Saban, you don't really know what to expect. And it's not like Florida only brings Anthony Richardson in on running plays. So if you're a Bama fan, you're going to say Anthony Richardson, when he comes in, it's pretty obvious what Florida's going to do. They're going to run the football. That's wrong because Anthony Richardson also comes in there and he's throwing the football. So Dan Mullen is really smart with how he's using this 2-quarterback system. Is really effective because even any one of these quarterbacks are a threat to take it to the house with their legs, and any one of these quarterbacks could gash you through the air in the passing game. So Dan Mullen is really strategic with how he's going about this quarterback system with these 2 quarterbacks. But my biggest concern about this, and that goes to the disadvantage that I have to talk about, is I really feel like if Dan Mullen has to continue to rotate these 2 quarterbacks in throughout the game, that is going to cost Florida because you're not really going to have a quarterback who's going to be able to get in rhythm. His timing is going to be off. You're going to kind of ruin the chemistry, and nobody's really going to be able to get things going. And I think I saw that happen in that FAU game. So Anthony Richardson came in for a drive. He got Florida into the red zone. I believe he had to come out because his helmet came off. So Emory Jones came in, and he ended up throwing the interception in the red zone against FAU in the season opener. And I believe the reason for that was simply for the fact that Emory Jones had to come in. You know, he wasn't really able to get in rhythm. The chemistry was kind of off. So, you know, that kind of affected his decision making in that play. Now, that doesn't excuse Emory Jones for throwing the interception. I'm just saying that in a game like this against a great Alabama team, I simply feel like, yeah, you will have the advantage because people don't really know what to expect out of these 2 QBs because you pretty much could do anything. But at the same time, you know, I really feel like this could be a disadvantage because these 2 quarterbacks will never really be able to get into a groove if Dan Mullen keeps on rotating these guys in. And I think that Dan Mullen understands that, and I think he's really banking on Emory Jones coming in and really showing us that he is a veteran because Emory Jones has kind of been playing like he's a true freshman quarterback or like he's a first-year starter, which he is a first-year starter. But remember that Emory Jones has been in this Florida football program for a good amount of time, for over the last couple of years, so he should really know the system. Some of the mistakes he's making shouldn't really be made because, you know, the experience that he kind of has knowing this Florida offense. So I really feel like if Emory Jones struggles early, then Dan Mullen can definitely bring Anthony Richardson in. And Anthony Richardson, I think if you guys saw my previous video about this quarterback controversy for Florida, I definitely feel like it's only a matter of time before Anthony Richardson ends up taking over, because every time Anthony Richardson is in the game, he makes plays. He only threw 3 passes last week against USF, and his first 2 went for touchdowns. He also had an 80-yard touchdown run. It's just something really special about Anthony Richardson, and I love Emory Jones a lot, but I really feel like, this is a game that he definitely has to come in and he has to play well, and we've really yet to seen it yet. During the USF game and the FAU games, he hasn't really looked all that well. So, I mean, I don't really know, but I really feel like there's an advantage to this quarterback controversy with this 2 QB system that Florida has, with the fact that Alabama is kind of going to have to prepare for both QBs. And then on top of that, you don't really know what to expect when both of these 2 QBs are in the game. Now, Florida needs to play flawless if they're going to be able to pull off the upset win. They're going to have to be able to win the turnover battle against Alabama. And also, they're going to have to commit less penalties than Alabama to win this game also, because Alabama is a machine right now. And I promise you, Florida fans, that this is not the same Alabama defense that you were able to put 40 on in the SEC championship game last year. This is an Alabama defense that has the second best defensive line in all of college football behind Georgia. This is a great defense that has a lot of talent that is going to be playing on Sundays, that's going to be future first round picks. And I wonder if Florida's offensive line is going to be able to hold up against Alabama's front 7, because we saw what Alabama's front 7 did to Miami week 1. And yeah, you're a better team than Miami, but at the same time, Florida's offensive line, I still feel like it's a little bit of a slight question mark. It just hasn't really been exploited because you haven't really had a team that you've played yet that has had the talent to test your offensive line. And while we're talking about tests, this is going to be the first true test to see how improved Todd Grantham's defense is this year against the run in the pass. We know Todd Grantham's defense had a lot of issues last year, so I want to see how this defense is going to look against Alabama offense that pretty much has picked up from where they left off last year with Bryce Young. So when you look at this Florida defense, how's the secondary going to match up against these wide receivers like John Mechie? Is Florida going to be able to get pressure on Bryce Young? Because Bryce Young is really good under pressure. As a matter of fact, I think that he's better under pressure than what he is when he's not pressured, which may be crazy to say, but it's really true in my opinion. On top of that, he's incredibly hard to get down. Like, he's really elusive, and you may not expect somebody to be so nimble when breaking tackles or breaking out of sacks for his size, because I believe he's only 5'11", like 197 pounds or 200 pounds or something like that. So he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's incredibly shifty. He's incredibly quick and elusive. He's hard to bring down. So I wonder how good Florida's defense is going to be. I know Florida has a really good defensive line, but my question is, can that secondary, how they going to perform, and how will these linebackers be? Now, Florida, okay, can they stay committed to the run game? I think Florida's offense is at its best when they're being balanced, when they're able to run the football. And yes, they can run the football. I know last year they were so dominant through the air, but they weren't really all that great running the football. I feel like this year, if Dan Mullen stays committed to the run game, this Florida run game could be incredibly good, especially when you have the threat of Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson in that QB. So you have to account for that. You didn't really have to account for that last year if you were on defense playing against Florida, because Kyle Trask wasn't really a great athlete. So when you look at the threat of having 2 quarterbacks who are great dual threat quarterbacks who can take it to the house with their legs, you have to account for that. So then that can open up running lanes for the running backs, and Florida has a really deep group of running backs. As a matter of fact, one of the more underrated running back rooms in the SEC right now. So for Florida, if Dan Mullen can stay committed to the run game, because I do believe that Florida can have some success running the football on Alabama, I just feel like they have to stay committed to it. I noticed that when Florida struggles on offense at times this season, it has been stretches during the games where they just try to throw the ball too much instead of just trying to run the football. So if you're Florida, I think that it's really important that they stay committed to this run game, because I really feel like Florida's offense is at its best when they're running the football. And yes, they can run the football. And yes, I do believe that they can have success running the football on Alabama. Now, if you're an Alabama fan, you got to look at Bryce Young. We know he's played well over the last 2 weeks. We know he played really well in the season opener against Miami. But this is going to be his first game starting on the road, and this is going to be a really hostile destination. The Swamp is going to be packed. I already know a couple of friends who are going to the game. It's going to be loud. How's the crowd noise going to affect Bryce Young? Could Bryce Young get rattled by the Florida crowd early? I'm really intrigued in seeing how Bryce Young fares in this game, because Bryce Young kind of handles himself like he's a veteran. You know, he's a redshirt freshman, but it kind of looks like he's a senior with how he handled things last week and the week before against Miami. Well, I want to see how he handles himself in a really hostile environment in the Swamp, which is a really tough place to play. So when I look at this Florida 2 quarterback system, if you're Alabama and you're an Alabama fan, how do you prepare for this if you're Nick Saban? Well, I think if you're Nick Saban, really and truly, okay, there's nothing really that you can do to prepare for it, really. All you really can do is just kind of, just test things out when the game happens and then make adjustments from there, because Alabama can prepare all they want to for it. But I really think that what separates Nick Saban from the rest of the coaches in college football is the fact that how good he is at making in-game adjustments. So Alabama could prepare all week for this 2 QB system for Florida and still kind of, struggle out the gate against it. I think it's really going to come down to the in-game adjustments that they're going to be able to make. But if you're Nick Saban, really you just have to just play your game, honestly, because I really feel like this 2 quarterback system for Florida is definitely going to cause Florida to kind of be at a disadvantage at some point during this game, because eventually, running these one of these QBs is going to end up being hot or cold. So if you're Dan Mullen, you're going to have to try to figure out which one of these QBs is going to be that hot, man, and who's going to end up being the guy who kind of doesn't really need to get a lot of snaps in this game. Is that going to be Emory Jones or is that Anthony Richardson? So if you're Nick Saban, really, honestly, I mean, you just have to play your game. Your front 7 is really good. Your front 7 is going to be able to get pressure on the QB. And Anthony Richardson is really special. So, of course, you're going to have something in place in terms of him coming in. But overall, I really feel like this just isn't something that you can just strategically prepare for before the game when you have something like this, because Florida, they're not really predictable when you have both Anthony Richardson or Emory Jones rotating in, because they can do pretty much the same thing. So you don't really have that advantage of, say, for example, Florida State. Every time Florida State puts in Jordan Travis, they run the football. They never really do anything innovative after that. They don't really try to switch it up. This isn't a situation like that. Dan Mullen is being really savvy with this, which is why I think this could be a slight advantage. But overall, when you're rotating in these 2 QBs, you're going to have bad chemistry and you're going to kind of ruin timing and things like that. So if you're Nick Saban, that you're kind of, waiting to see if that's going to happen. That probably will happen when you have a really good Alabama defense. So that's really going to throw things off. So for Nick Saban, he's probably going to have to make in-game adjustments during the game when Florida ends up rotating both Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. But overall, I'm going to take Alabama to win this game. I think Alabama wins this game 38-20. I do believe Florida will score some points early, but at the end of the day, I really feel like Florida really needs to come into this game and kind of figure out who their quarterback is, because I really feel like rotating in Emory Jones, Anthony Richardson isn't going to be as effective against Alabama like it was against USF and FAU, simply for the fact that Alabama has a really good defense, a really talented defense, and I really feel like this really isn't the defense that you kind of want to be trying trying to experiment things and try to get guys experience. I know that's what Dan Mullen has been trying to say. He's been trying to get Anthony Richardson experience and things like that, but I think that's a load of malarkey. Like, I think he's just trying to figure out which QB is going to pull themselves away, and I kind of feel like Anthony Richardson has been pulling himself away, but he's not starting in this game. Emory Jones has already been announced as starter like a couple hours after USF game, so I want to see how Emory Jones is going to look in this game, because if we end up seeing Anthony Richardson in, then I don't really think that's going to end up being a good sign if Anthony Richardson comes in and he ends up taking over for the rest of the game, because that means that Emory Jones has probably had a couple of turnovers, and trust me, against this Alabama offense, I don't really think that Florida wants to give Alabama any free extra possessions, especially when we don't really know just how good Florida's offense is. So I'm taking Alabama to win. I think they're going to win 38-20. I don't really see Florida's defense getting any stops in this game. Honestly, I just think that Alabama's offense is just so doggone good and so doggone dominant, and I also feel like Alabama is going to be able to get a couple of takeaways in this game also. So I'm taking Alabama to get the win on the road in the Swamp.